A journalist asked Nigel Farage today if he'd like to apologise to the families of the 72 people who died at Grenfell Tower.
Oh, I'll apologise for everything that's happened in the last couple of hundred years. Absolutely. This is modern journalism, isn't it? Apologise, apologise, apologise to victims of the Amritsar massacre, etc. I don't think I can say any more than that. You know, what more can I say than I think the comments I've said offensive, deeply inappropriate, ill-judged. If that isn't a pretty clear signal, I couldn't even tell you what is.
Right. So let's talk about what actually happened at Reform's press conference this morning. Because on the surface of it, it looked like just another one. You know, Nigel being Nigel, Robert Jenrick saying the serious-sounding things, and a few journalists asking awkward questions. Normal Thursday stuff. Except it wasn't. Because if you sit in the room for an hour, and I have, well, metaphorically, so you don't have to, what you're actually going to watch is a party trying very hard to look like a government in waiting and failing at it in about 6 different ways all at the same time. Some of those failures are loud. Most of them are quiet, though, and it's the quiet ones that tell you the most. The headline today will be Simon Dudley, Reform's housing spokesman appointed last month, and gave an interview to Inside House magazine where he said that the Grenfell Tower was a tragedy, but that everyone dies in the end, and that's just how you go, right? About 72 people who, in the words of the inquiry chair, Sir Martin Moore-Brick, died deaths that were, and I quote, all avoidable. Farage sacked him at the press conference, said the comments were deeply inappropriate and frankly shocking. Fine, done. Except then a journalist from LBC asked the obvious question. Did Farage tell his own people before announcing it to the press? And the answer, delivered live at the press conference, told you quite a lot.
Simon Dudley, did you say you are sacked because of his comments?
I haven't spoken to him. He's under Richard Tice's department. Richard appointed him housing spokesman, given his depth of experience in developing new towns, but the comments were deeply inappropriate. They were, frankly, rather shocking to many people, and Richard has dealt with it.
And then, in a separate interview later in the day, Farage went even further.
Yeah, okay. I want to ask you about Simon Dudley. This was your
I
housing spokesperson.
barely know him.
Well, come on, he was your housing spokesperson.
Well,
You're the leader of the party, and you made these comments. I want to remind people, everyone dies in the end. Fires happened. Sadly, everyone dies in the end. I mean, those were offensive comments, were they?
Yeah, he was appointed 2 weeks ago. He's made these comments. He's no longer there.
When you say he's no longer there, do you mean he's no longer in the party or no longer the housing spokesperson?
He's no longer the housing spokesperson.
Is he, but he's still potentially in Reform?
Can people be expelled from saying things that are inappropriate
well, I think they
and
can,
wrong?
Can't they? You're the boss.
No, Richard Tice is the boss. I'm not the boss of everything anymore. It's not a one-man band. I've devolved power to Scotland, to Wales, to 4 big positions, and they're running their departments.
Can you just explain to people why he was expelled? Why he was?
I haven't spoken to Richard about it.
But what do you understand why those comments?
Because the
caused
comments were offensive and ill-judged.
Do you think they were offensive?
I do.
Okay. Should he apologise?
Maybe he has.
Have you spoken to him? I just want to kind of understand what exactly
I've met him
happened.
once for 2 minutes. I don't know the guy.
So here he is, telling that he sacked someone he'd never met from a department he had handed to somebody else and made sure that 2 separate audiences knew it was absolutely nothing to do with him. Prime Ministers don't get to say, it's not my department. That's the whole point of the job. Farage spent this morning auditioning for it while showing exactly how he would manage it. Now, it's not a one-man band anymore. It's a band where the lead singer takes the credit and the drummer takes the blame. Now, the Dudley story will probably dominate the news coverage today as well as it did yesterday. Like every paper, every channel, every other video on this will lead with it. And that's all just noise, because something quieter is going to get lost. Something that I think is actually more revealing. The press conference was supposed to be about the triple lock. Farage and Jenrick came out to announce that the Reform government would protect the state pension. A fine policy, it was popular with the older people, and not a huge surprise given that a third of their voters are over 65. But Farage said something else while he was at it.
Is that within the next 2 weeks, we are going to announce the biggest cuts to the benefits bill ever seen in the history of this country.
Gargantuan, he called them in a later interview. The biggest ever in history, coming in a fortnight.
Coming weeks.
We're going to do gargantuan cuts.
He didn't say what they were or who would be affected, or didn't say how much. Just trust us, it's enormous and details to follow. Foul that way because we're going to come back to it. Because when Robert Jenrick stood up to talk about the cost of living, the journalist asked him how young people might feel watching reform prioritise pensioners when they're struggling to afford rent, struggling to afford or find work and watch their bills climb. And Jenrick's answer was this.
And it seems to me there's quite a lot of people who have pretty comfortable lives who seem to want to take away a decent state pension from people who are finding life actually very difficult at the moment. It's not easy to live on £230 a week.
People with comfortable lives wanting to strip income from people who are struggling. It's also a perfect description of what reform just promised to do with benefit claimants. He made the argument against his own party's policy. That's not a gaffe that you can walk back on, without clarification. He wasn't misquoted. He wasn't taken out of context, which they'll probably try and claim. He was answering a direct question, and the answer happened to demolish the announcement his own party had made 10 minutes earlier. And then, not 20 minutes later, when asked whether the welfare crackdown would affect British-born citizens, he says this.
Then, yes, absolutely, we're going to crack down on those people. Because it's completely unfair for people who are getting up in the morning, going to work, putting food on the table for their kids, to see someone living next door to them, lying in bed, having the Motability car on the drive, having an easy life.
People with comfortable lives stripping income from those who are struggling. He said it himself half an hour earlier about a completely different group and apparently didn't even notice. Now, the triple lock, because this is where Farage got rattled. A journalist pointed out that roughly 9 months ago, Farage had said that he'd shared the concern about pensions being unaffordable on the national level. What a change. And Farage, who is normally pretty slippery, gave an answer that was way more honest than he probably intended.
Well, Reform have recently said that it was an unaffordable policy.
Everything's unaffordable. We're running a massive deficit. There is no item of expenditure today that is affordable. We're skint.
Everything is unaffordable. So the answer to why have you changed your position is the original position meant nothing. So are we looking at a policy U-turn or an admission that the previous position wasn't really a position at all? Which brings me to what I think is the most damning part of this whole press conference, and one where you can actually start to see the cracks forming within his own party. Farage has built his whole brand on being the straight talker, the man who says the quiet part out loud. No spin, no hedging, just straight answers. Watch what he actually does when he's pressed on specifics. Winter fuel payments. Will reform make them universal again?
Well, on winter fuel payments, we were very clear that Rachel Reeves not only broke her word, they said that they wouldn't do it, they did it, we campaigned against it, we both voted against it, and it was right that eventually Rachel Reeves was forced into a U-turn, and that I think is the right way for it to remain.
So no policy decision on that, just a bit of a history lesson with a shrug at the end. But it doesn't stop there. He carries on.
We should have addressed this stuff way, way, way earlier. Women's pension age disparity with men, etc. And we are gradually increasing the working pension age. But again, it's one of those massive subjects we'll have to think about and debate at great length. But there is a logic. The big difference between us and the Conservatives is that we're the only ones likely to be challenging to actually have to face making these decisions, is what I would say.
He's always just about to announce something, always just about to say something gargantuan, always deferring or hedging or pointing elsewhere. The details are always coming. The big announcement is always 2 weeks away, just like Trump. For a man whose entire appeal rests on blunt honesty, today was 45 minutes of a very confident vagueness. And then the journalist asked him to apologise to the families of Grenfell.
Oh, I'll apologise for everything that's happened in the last couple of 100 years, absolutely. This is modern journalism, isn't it? Apologise, apologise, apologise to victims of the Amritsar massacre, etc. I don't think I can say any more than that, you know. What more can I say than I think the comments, well, I've said offensive, deeply inappropriate, ill-judged, If that isn't a pretty clear signal, I couldn't even tell you what is.
And then, in the interview that came later, he was asked whether he agreed that too much regulation had followed Grenfell.
And lastly, I know you've got to go. Do you agree with him more broadly that too much was done after Grenfell?
I've no idea.
He performed the outrage. He couldn't sustain it for one more question. He found that it was easier to sack the man than say sorry to the families, and easier still just not to have a view at all. But don't forget, Farage is the man that tells it straight.